actually, Julie raised her hand again. Julie, go ahead if you have any questions.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I think I do have some questions around the specifics of like just working in China versus here in the US. Having been like, for me, been in the US for over a decade now, I think it's hard to imagine working in the Chinese kind of professional environment. So I think I specifically have like maybe two questions. So you mentioned longer working hours. So do you think there is a general sense or preference for the length of time you're at work versus the productivity? So for example, if I'm able to get done my job in, let's say, 5 hours versus 10 hours, is it acceptable to just like check out after 5 hours? Or do you actually have to stay the entire like 10 hours?
That's a good question. It still depends on different company and different teams, actually. I mean, I think take BCG as an example. I think for us, we are still driven by efficiency. At least, I mean, for the BCG colleagues or BCG partners or colleagues I've been working with, I think it's still efficiency driven. So if you're done with your job, if you you provide, I would say, good quality of your job already, I think the hours is not, I mean, at least hours is not the only thing that matters. So, but this is the BCG I know of. But for the other clients I've been working with, I mean, they are companies which doesn't have a, I would say, relatively speaking, healthy culture. So there will be companies and managers or directors who tend to, or teams even, who tend to work the same hour, quote unquote. If your boss is still there, then you still have to be there. So I would say China is in general, or the working environment in China is very diversified. There are companies led by, I would say, managers or directors with a very, I would say, clear, logical, and rational mindset. This is where you will see efficiency over this longer hour. So if you're good, then you can have, you can leave early, you can go. But there will be also some other, I would say, companies, teams, which I would say efficiency is still not that high. So this is, so I think this is important. If you want to work in this environment, you do have to select your employer, even your team or your boss, more carefully. So do your research, do your homework, and then I would say, I think the overall environment, I feel is getting for sure better. I think more and more people, they are, putting efficiency or putting the result-driven mindset as a priority versus, only working long hours. But still, I think given the diversity of the, environment, still there could be cases where long hours, but not necessarily in some company. So pick your employer or boss carefully.
Yeah, that's great advice. So for like a relatively healthy, team, do you think that translates into acceptable like time off? So for example, like, is it okay to actually, take vacation time and without having to be worried about like, negative impact?
In general, I think, I mean, again, even within BCG, we have different teams, we have different partners, we have different projects. So I think there's a big diversity within BCG already. And then if you talk about outside BCG, then there's diversity in bigger scope. So, I mean, the question is pretty general. So I would say for some company and some, I would say, leaders, they respect work-life balance more than other company and other leaders. So given this big scope of diversity, I can only say, okay, be prepared, do your homework before you join a company or work with someone in that company. I've seen, I would say, examples in BCG, in other companies for both, I would say, situations.
Okay, I see, for sure. And the last part, sorry, it's really I'm taking up a lot of time. I feel bad. The last part is from what you're seeing, and it's totally okay if you're going from your personal experience,
Yeah.
have you seen a lot of women in leadership for a company like BCG in China?
I think that's a very good question. I mean, in BCG, actually, BCG is very actively promoting, I would say, women in leadership. And then we do have, at least for Greater China, this is where I work in, quite some leaders who are women. For example, if you check our website, our leading partner for Greater China system, which is basically a leading partner for our Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Taipei, and Hong Kong office, I think is Dr. Wu Chun. She's a female. And then our leading partner for the Shanghai office, which is also a female. And then the previous leading partner for our Beijing office was also a female. So it's very, very common, at least in BCG Greater China, for our leadership. And also, I think our current chairman of Greater China is also a female. So I think in BCG, at least, we actively promote this healthy culture of equality in terms of gender, in terms of minority groups. I think this is something actually BCG did pretty well.
Okay, yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we have a few questions and follow-up questions in chat box. So this question from Yiwen, and again, this follow-up question: how do you manage a good life-work balance and a fast-paced environment in BCG?
I would say, yeah, this is a challenge. I mean, consulting is considered a, relatively speaking, tougher job in general, even here in the US. I think for China, it's the same thing, or it gets slightly more challenging given we have to work slightly longer hours. But I think the key thing is to prioritize, right? You have your work, you have your life, you have your family. You also have, I mean, for me, there's also MBA on the side and the weekend. I think the key thing is to prioritize, to know, and on a given day or on a given moment, what is the most important thing you have to achieve, and then what are the things that you could put a bit, push a bit later, or push a bit back even. I think that's the first thing. Two is, I think you get to improve your efficiency. I think under some pressure and under some practice. So if you really have a lot on your plate, which I would say it's similar for anyone who's in the career ladder of any, I would say, organization. Say if you're manager, director, or even you're a C-level, I would say, management person in a company, there's always things coming from different directions. Your team, your boss, your clients, your family. I think they will all occupy your time. So after some stage, you will have to figure out, okay, the only important resource you have is your time. And then, so I would say, number one, prioritize. Number two, improve efficiency on the things that can be improved. And then I think number three is, one thing I learned to handle pressure is always find something, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, in school, find a big habit, or find some time to have a conversation with yourself, or even, I mean, I recently started to do this mindfulness practice as well. So I think number three would be just find some time to temporarily escape from all these things that are coming to you. So I think that would help as well.
Thank you. So we have another Yixin raised your raised hand. So Yixin, you can unmute yourself. Just go ahead.
Hi, Jun. Thank you for your impressive presentation.
Hi.
So last year, like the winter of 2021, I went to PwC, also do something related to consulting. So at that time, I really loved the environment and like the type of work of PwC of consulting. But now I major in computer science, and I also got into a graduate university major still in computer science. So I'm very like surprised and to see that you can balance both the technology part and the consulting part. So I'm wondering, like when I was at PwC, I talked with one of the partner of PwC, and I asked about like, I want to do work about consulting, but she suggests that since I major in computer science, I should like go deep into one like area first, and then you come out and go to the consulting industry to do like more specific work. And that is exactly what you did. So I'm wondering like, for you, do you think I noted that you spent like 4 years and 5 years to got in to be the principal of BCG? That is very great achievement. Do you think that is because like you went deep into one specific technology field? Is that what you have? Is that a good way or good career path for like general public, for STEM student like me? Do you think it's a good career path, or do you think it is better to go into consulting industry if you really want to do that kind of job?
That's a great question, and it's a tough question. I think consulting, I mean, there's no magic of consulting, right? This is just another type of job people normally go. I would say, I mean, another point is you see people going in and out consulting all the time. So there are people who first join a consulting firm and then they go to an MBA, they join some corporate, they come back to consulting. I think for computer science, that's also one of the very popular fields. I think it's also a lot of the, I would say, quote unquote, excitement in technology these days are also correlated to computer science. So I would say, I mean, since I don't know you that much, I couldn't give you, I would say, career advice. But I could say, okay, for computer science, you get to work on most likely the most exciting topics in technology, like AIs or like machine learning or autonomous driving. This is already exciting enough for a lot of people. And then you get to really learn the new technology, implement them, and then get to see them go online where they run. You can see the results. So that's very exciting as a job already. And then for consulting, I think you also have partial experience already. So you get to work on different clients and topics, and they're mostly, some could be tech related, but you won't get the depth of technology for sure if you work in consulting for a long time. But we do have some projects which are tech related. So I think I think I will use this typical consultant answer to any question. It depends. So if you like technology job, you want to develop or you want to work with all the latest technology, you want to have some exciting products which are coming from your, I would say, piece of code or your contribution, then do computer science. If you feel like you're the one who enjoys this kind of switch of topics, switch of projects, switch of clients, and a lot of traveling, of course, that's also part of the consulting job. Then you can also do, I mean, then maybe consulting is good for you. But and another point is there's also opportunity to switch back and forth, right? Even if you do computer science, you can do consulting first. And if you have the computer science training with the consulting, you can actually go back to a tech firm, which you can do either some management job of technology development, or you can go back to actually software coding as well. So I would say there's pros and cons for both sides. And then given the limit of information I have to say it depends. And then how do you evaluate the pros and cons on both sides?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have two more questions, I guess. The one is in the chat box from Jensen. Would you wish you had known more before you made your career switch from Broadcom to BCG?
What do I wish I know before I switch? That's a good question. I never thought about this actually. Well, if I look back, I think I wish I know. I mean, I prepared for a long time for the consulting job for sure. But then if I look back, I mean, as every career switch, I think the first 6 months, 3 to 6 months is always a challenge. Even if you switch from engineering company one to company B, there will be challenges. And then my challenge, I think, was a bit more drastic because I was switching different industry, different company, even different country. So I think I still wish I talked to my consulting friends more about how the consulting firm works, because I was an engineering company and consulting company. They work they're in terms of the dynamics, it's quite different. Engineering company, I think you work most of the time with a fixed group of people. You work on related topics from time to time, and then I think it's a good balance between you work with a machine and work with people. But I think for consulting company, I think there's more human touch in your daily work. I mean, much more. Most of the time, you will be working with your colleagues, you're working with your clients, and then I think a lot of this dynamics, the way it works, is quite different. So if I want to say I want to improve a bit more, is I could have talked to my consulting friends a bit even more before I joined a consulting firm.
Then you decide not to switch.
I think I will still switch. I think this will make my first 3 to 6 months slightly better in terms of less, I would say, anxiety, less frustration, and less, I would say, challenge. But eventually, if you have, I would say, curiosity, and then you work a bit harder in the initial, I would say, half a year, you will overcome those challenges.
Okay. So we'll give the last question to Dee. Dee, she is our former Leaper members. Dee, do you want to unmute yourself?
Hi, Dr. He. This is Dee. The question is actually from Keith.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. He, and thank you, Dr. Wang, for your share. I actually had two questions. One is simply looking at your resume and your career trajectory. You had very impressive amount of work experience, and you reached the principal in consulting firm fairly quickly. So my first question is, how do you accelerate your career, and what things do you put in place to accelerate your career? And the second question is, I'm also working on an engineering consulting firm, and came from the engineering background. What is there a mind shift that you move from engineering to management consulting career? And if so, what are your mind shift how do you come over that mind shift or challenge, if you have?
Okay. For the first question, I wouldn't say I moved very quickly in terms of the career ladder. I think I'm okay. Most of the consulting firms, I would say, they have this relatively fixed, I would say, schedule or rhythm for people to get up in the ladder. So I think normally, I mean, you will spend 2 to 3 years in one position. And then, I mean, the one thing about, I would say, consulting firm, especially the McKinsey and BCGs, or at least I can only speak for BCG, is the evaluation kind of frequency is higher than normal companies. And then they have a, relatively speaking, compared with most of the corporate, a faster career track for you to move up. So I think that this is I would say, experience with BCG is, I would say, not the fastest, just normal. So this is how consulting works, basically. So I think that's not fast. And then for the mindset point, I think you're right. There is a pretty significant mindset change from engineering to consulting. I think a couple of things, well, at least for me, when I first joined a consulting firm, a couple of things you have to, I would say, live with, or you have to cope with initially. One is you have to be able to somewhat understand the business meaning of all of your decisions. So for engineering job, I think mostly you work on a specific problem, which is well defined. You have a fixed set of, I would say, performance indicators or KPIs to meet. But for most of the consulting projects or consulting topics, you first have to define the problem or figure out what the problem is. And then you have to figure out what the satisfactory result is. And this you have to figure out sometimes with your team or even your clients. So I would say business problem versus engineering problem. I think the level of uncertainty or the degree of uncertainty is one big thing you have to deal with. I think the second thing is the level of communication. I think as I mentioned earlier. So for engineering job, I don't know, for different industry or different engineering industry, I think the mix of, you're working by yourself versus communication with your team and boss might be different. But I would say for most of the engineering job, there's a big portion of it is you are working on the solution by yourself most of the time. And then with some touch of communication, for example, meetings or presentation to your boss. But I think for consulting, especially once you've been there for a while, I think a lot of communications you have to handle. For example, you have your team, you have your client, you have your boss, and then you have to talk with them whenever there's a chance, especially for client communication. It happens almost all the time when a client wants to talk to you. So you have to be comfortable and I would say fluent to handle different type of communication. And then by fluent or to handle, I mean, you have to be more, I would say, considerate or aware of your audience, and you have to tailor your communication skill for different type of communication. I think that's something I would say engineering job doesn't require that much, but if you are engineer, you have the skill, it will be also very, very helpful for your career as an engineer. So I think that's the second thing that I think it's a skill set change, but it's also a mindset change, because communication for a traditional engineering job, you wouldn't say that's your top 1 or 2, I would say, skill set. But I think for consulting, it's for sure one of the top 3 skill sets. And then even for an engineering job, once you work there longer, once you have your ambition in the company organization, then communication will become more and more important later on.
Thank you for your share. That really brings me to think about it. And sorry, I have a really quick follow-up question.
Yeah.
What do you prepare that like during your engineering career in your previous company that in order to get into a management consulting firm like BCG, what preparation did you have done like beforehand, and how do you prepare your case to make a career shift?
I think this is consulting preparation is a very, I would say, standard process. So they have case interviews. So basically, you prepare. Consulting firm use the same interview, I would say, process and standard for MBAs, PhDs, and the industry hires. So they have the same standard and same process. So you prepare for cases, you find your business case practice partners. And then I think for me, the special thing I did is because I mentioned earlier, so I spent 2 years. So initially tried the North American offices, then I moved back to Chinese offices. So I think I did a lot of case practice. That's number one. A lot in terms of a longer time, and also a lot of, I would say, cases. Number two, which is important, is to get connections for sure. I think this is something everybody knows. So get to know people actually work for this company you want to work for. Talk with them. See if this is a really good fit for you. I think that's the most important thing. If you think that's a good fit, then you can ask for a mock interview from them as well. So I think you practice cases with your partners, case practice partners, but then I think practicing a case with your friends actually working for consulting, which is also very helpful. So I think, more practices and then get to know the right people. I think that's the most important thing if you want to get a consulting job. And I think during that process, you will gradually figure out as well if this is a job for you. If you suffer a lot from that preparation process, then most probably you won't be very happy in the job as well. So I think this is also a discovery process if you prepare for the interviews.